Okay, so we're going to continue our lecture talking about peripheral hemodynamics, and right now we're going to talk about shunting blood from one area of activity to another area of higher activity. So two areas we can never borrow blood from is one, the heart, and two, the brain. We can never borrow blood from those areas. Blood in the brain is the same percentage, about 15%. So when we exercise, blood flow to that area is increased to keep it at that 15%. Our blood in the heart, we see a dramatic increase because, like we talked about last time with myocardial physiology, it's already extracting, the coronary vessels and the heart already extracts as much oxygen as it can with each pass. So it already takes about 85 to 90% of what it's given. So the only way to give it more oxygen is to increase blood flow. Right? So the heart cannot widen its AVO2 difference. So it cannot extract more oxygen with each pass because it already extracts as much as it possibly can. The only way to give the heart more oxygen is therefore to increase blood flow to the area. That's going to be different with regards to other areas. Okay, so skeletal muscle tissue gets about 20 to 25% of blood at rest. And it increases to about 80 to 85% of blood during exercise. So our kidneys, these receive less blood flow during exercise, right? So we are shunting blood from areas such as our kidneys or our splanchnic region. But we can't decrease flow too much because we don't want to compromise our GFR, right? Which is our glomerular filtration rate. That is our filtration system. So even though the kidneys get less blood, our GFR may stay the same because we increase the pressure in the glomerulus. When we increase the pressure in the glomerulus, we increase the force of blood going to Bowman's capsule, so we filter a larger percentage of the lessened blood that we are receiving. Okay, so I'll say that again. Even though the kidneys are getting less blood to them during when we're exercising, our GFR may stay the same, so we're filtrating the same rate because the increase in the pressure of the glomerulus. We sense that change in blood flow, so the glomerulus and the kidneys increases pressure. When we increase the pressure, we increase the force of blood going into Bowman's capsule area. So we are filtering a larger percentage of the lessened blood that we are receiving. Okay, so two other areas of dramatic change is one is our skin and two is our splanchnic region. Okay. Our splanchnic region gets a lot of blood at rest. So this is near our gut, right? Near our core. Our digestive system, kidneys, all of that is a part of our splanchnic region. But this decreases dramatically during exercise. So let's talk about our skin. All right, so our splanchnic region, we decrease blood flow to that area dramatically during exercise. We're shunting it from that area. With regard to our skin, this gets a lot more blood during exercise. Because why? We want to get rid of heat. So we are trying to thermoregulate by bringing blood to the surface so we can dissipate that heat into the environment. Okay. On average, we produce about 70 kcals of heat every hour. So if we don't dissipate those kcals to the environment around you, your body will go up about 1.5 degrees Celsius every hour. So if you're just sitting right there, you produce about 70 kcals of heat every hour. If you didn't have the ability to evaporate or radiate or dissipate heat in one form or the other, your body's core temperature would go up 1.5 degrees every hour. So we are constantly creating and dissipating heat to maintain a net homeostatic level. So vasomotion. This is the oscillation between vasoconstriction and vasodilation of the vascular smooth muscles of the arterioles, which gives us the ability to change the luminal size, right? We need to make this acute adjustment during exercise. So we talked about that in the intro to cardiovascular physiology when we were talking about the vessels and the tree. We go down from the aorta to the arteries to the arterioles to the capillaries. So when we're in the area from the arteries, we're going into the arterioles. The dominant tissue of those walls, if you recall, is vascular smooth muscle. Vascular smooth muscle has the ability to contract and expand, and dilate in order for us to increase or decrease flow to a certain area. Okay, so let's talk about the cerebral cortex involvement. So this is where we have our theory of central command, right? Which says all of these things that are going on which are going to occur peripherally, which allows us to exercise, occurs from our central nervous system. So the cortex, right? So our motor cortex, our primary motor cortex, our premotor cortex, and our somatosensory area, right? All these areas right here allow us to exercise, right? So we talked about this before with regards to motor control, all of these areas, right? So these areas gives us that decision in order for us to, allows us to exercise. Right, to exercise, we need to generate the idea of movement. This occurs in the association area of the cerebral cortex. So where are we? The association area. Oh, it's not pictured here. But our association area of the cerebral cortex is where it's going to generate the idea of movement. Then we will trigger all of those alpha motor neurons and those events to occur, which we've learned earlier on in the semester. When this happens, there's an increase in skeletal muscle metabolism, an increase in heat production, an increase in hypothalamic temperature, and an increase in sweat gland activity. Now, hypothalamus right here, this is very important. So hypothalamus right in here. This is our temperature regulating center, right? So we have an increased blood flow to that as well during exercise, because our hypothalamus is going to be one of our control centers that makes the decision whether we need to activate all of these other mechanisms in order to create or dissipate or create and conserve heat, depending on the environment we're in, or if we're exercising or if we're in the heat versus the cold. So our hypothalamus is our temperature regulating center. All right, so when we exercise, let's talk about blood flow when we exercise. We need to make sure we get blood to the areas where demand is the greatest. So we will decrease skeletal muscular vascular resistance, and we do this by vasomotion. So we're increasing the luminal size, but we are decreasing vascular resistance, right? So vascular resistance slows down flow. So right here we have a normal vessel over here with blood flow. When we exercise, we want that vascular smooth muscle, which is within the walls of the arterioles, we want that to expand, right? So we want those to vasodilate. So we're going to bring more blood to those working tissues, to the area. So we will vasodilate in the skin specifically, and we were going to vasodilate in the vessels leading to the muscles. Those are the two big areas, right? So we will decrease vascular resistance. We are changing luminal size. So the lumen here, right, where blood flow is coming through the lumen, we're going to change the luminal size. This then changes resistance. So less resistance equals more blood flow. Right, so when we exercise, we have a dramatic increase in blood flow to the skin and to the working muscles. Right? Again, we talked about how the skin needs an increase in blood flow because of all the metabolic activity we're doing with muscular contractions. Number one byproduct of all metabolic activity is heat. So the more heat we're creating, the increase in demand for us to dissipate that heat, because we are starting to increase our temperature. So we need the need for us to dissipate that heat into the environment becomes very, very important. So you will see a dramatic increase in blood flow to the skin, because that is our body's way of trying to dissipate all this excess metabolic heat into the environment in order to maintain our homeostatic state where our temperature likes to be. We will also have a dramatic increase in blood flow, obviously, to the working tissues. In order for us, we need a lot of blood flow to those working tissues in order to bring oxygen and nutrients and also the removal of waste. Now, when we continue to exercise, if we decide to keep exercising, the muscles will always win, no matter what. You're going to still have a dramatic increase in blood flow to the skin and to the muscles. However, if we choose to keep exercising, those muscle tissues that are contracting need oxygen and nutrients brought to the area, as well as we need to remove the waste. So those working muscles will win out, will get the majority of the blood flow for the most part. This is evident with an increase in core temperature rise. So if someone kept exercising, exercises, and we kept measuring we have done this in lab. I've done this in lab before, where you measure someone's core temperature. When you measure someone's core temperature, you know that the muscles are winning because you see a rise in core temperature. That means our body is creating heat faster than we can dissipate it. So our muscles will always win out. Then once we stop exercising, yes, all of the blood flow will shoot to the skin for the most part in order for us to dissipate that heat, because our body wants to come back down in temperature into that homeostatic state. Okay, so vasomotion continued. During exercise, there's going to be an increase in skeletal muscle activity with an increase in norepinephrine. There will be a dramatic decrease in renal and splanchnic blood flow, right? So we talked about the digestive area as well as the kidney area. Why do we see norepinephrine going up so dramatically? Because we cannot exercise without turning on the sympathetic nervous system. And what's our dominant sympathetic nervous system neurotransmitter? Right, is norepinephrine. Norepinephrine is also a circulating catecholamine, like we talked about last time. This works in conjunction with epinephrine. Norepinephrine is 20% as a catecholamine, and 80% is epinephrine. So our dominant sympathetic catecholamine is epinephrine. We will be also increasing the levels of catecholamines when exercising. So not only are we increasing the level of norepinephrine and epinephrine as neurotransmitters coming from our brain, we're going to also be increasing norepinephrine and epinephrine as circulating catecholamines, which is hormones, which are released from our adrenal cortex, right? Where do those sit? Those sit on top of our kidneys. All right, so let's talk about how we control these vessels physiologically. How are we contracting and shunting blood from one area and increasing blood flow to the other area, right? So in order to have a dramatic decrease in blood flow to the splanchnic region and kidneys, we have to constrict those vessels leading to those organs. This will be the responsibility of our sympathetic nervous system, more specifically our vasomotor center. This is located within the medulla of the brain. This contains the pressor and the depressor areas. So when exercising, the pressor center will exhibit its effect on vessels leading to the splanchnic region and the kidneys. The pressor center will use norepinephrine and act upon alpha adrenergic receptors of the vessels. This will induce vasoconstriction of the vessels. While with the skeletal muscle and the skin, we want to increase the blood flow to those areas by increasing the luminal size of those vessels. So we want to decrease the activity of the pressor area in those regions, right? In the skin and the skeletal muscle tissue. So the depressor area does not send a signal to the vessels to say actively dilate, but instead it tells the pressor area to back off on its discharge. By backing off on its discharge, we will induce what's called passive dilation. Epinephrine is the dominant sympathetic catecholamine and will bind to those beta-2 adrenergic receptors of the vessel. This then cancels out the action of the alpha receptors. Passive vasodilation will ensue, luminal size increases, and blood flow increases, and then systemic vascular resistance decreases. Okay, that's a very, very important concept to go over right there with regards to the sympathetic nervous system and vessel control. All right, so please make sure you review that pretty well. All right, so the pressor area, if we want to vasoconstrict, we vasoconstrict in certain vessels. However, our depressor area does not actively dilate. It just tells the pressor center to back off. And then we have something what's called passive vasodilation, which then increases blood flow to the area. Okay, so now next we will head on to our next screencast from here.